Okay, so this is the beginning of the meeting. Shall I begin the Star Spangled Banner?
I think so.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Home of the brave.
You know, Frank, being a singer myself, that being in sync like they were is really not that easy, and
Yeah,
they were very good.
and that's a great arrangement. Someone must have really arranged it with some imagination. They did a good job.
They're
Wasn't
definitely,
that Francis Scott Key?
Yeah, right.
they're obviously musical people. And I want to thank our annual sponsors. First of all, Louis Jones Abilis and Avalon is a law firm of high prestige. They've been a supporter of ours for a number of years now, and we deeply appreciate their efforts. We have Covent Energy. Covent Energy has taken a lot of trucks off the road by burning energy here in a very efficient and relatively clean way, and have made a great contribution to that. And Gershow Recycling, one of the most conscientious members of the community in terms of doing a job that's very difficult, very dirty, and very controversial, and making it as clean as possible. And then we have National Grid. National Grid is, of course, our provider for gas in this area, but they provide gas and electric for many parts of the state, and we deeply appreciate their sponsorship. And the meeting itself is sponsored by your company, Frank, which is, if you want to say a word about it, you can.
Well, so we're Desktop Solutions, which is a software development company that's been here on Long Island for over 20 years, and we specialize in medical, legal, and other business applications.
And I want to introduce our speakers. First of all, both of them I consider friends for a long time, and not only friends, but people who are deeply committed to the community and have been for a very long time. John Cameron is a man who has created a wonderful engineering firm, which is, I've been to his place years ago, and it's, I'm sure it's grown since then, and it's a very impressive operation. And he has been a contributor to the, he is a, I guess it's the executive director of the
Chairman
of the Long Island, give me the title exactly.
Long Island Regional Planning Council.
Very good. And Martin Cantor, who is Dr. Cantor now, has been an economist and been an advisor to several administrations. He is also, one of his great credits in this world is that he's my friend. And
I'm amazed you're even going to acknowledge it.
So what I'll do is I'll let John start off with a brief overview of what he thinks we need to do on Long Island, and then we'll go to Martin.
Okay, thank you, Ernie. Well, good morning, everybody. As we all know, Long Island is a great place to live, work, play, and raise a family, if we can keep it. To do so, we need to address many key challenges, including an unsustainable tax burden, accelerating the exodus of high net worth individuals, employers, and job creators, as well as many of our young workforce. A lack of affordable housing for our young and empty nesters. As the nation's first suburb, an aging transportation and environmental infrastructure. Drinking water challenges, quality and quantity, in particular for Nassau County. Surface water contamination from nitrogen and other pollutants. A vulnerability to sea level rise, climate change, and the inevitable Sandy 2. A looming solid waste crisis with the associated increase in disposal costs, an increasingly overburdened roadway network, the impending transformational change in the method of energy production and delivery, and the costs that will accompany that change, the growing disparity in income and wealth, an increasing immigrant population with associated educational and healthcare challenges, and atop it all, a state legislature that appears hell-bent on doing all it can do to drive people and businesses out of the state. The choice is ours. Will we have the intestinal fortitude and mettle to make the really tough decisions, or will we continue to allow the vocal naysayers from stopping us from addressing these vexing challenges and actually take up the mantle of leaving this island as a better place than when it was passed to us by, yes, America's greatest generation? The choice is definitely ours to make. What say we all? Some solutions, just for some thought, is, as we all know, we need to be growing our economy, as well as including our commercial and industrial tax base. PPPs, public-private partnerships. Affordable housing, we all know, is a huge issue on Long Island. And for me, it's a question of two things. One is unsustainable tax burden, as well as an issue of supply and demand. We have an insufficient supply, so as a result, the cost of housing is through the roof. Transit-oriented developments, mass transportation, privatization, school choice, consolidation of governmental services, zoning overlay districts, repurposing of commercial and retail space, and financial incentives for conservation of resources, being water, energy, waste, etc. Just some food for thought. Ernie, I'll turn over to Marty.
All right, Marty, you can give us an overview of what you see as some of the more important issues, and they may overlap.
Well, I can't really, because I'm going to pack my house up and move after John's synopsis of what's wrong with Long Island.
Right.
I'll see you guys. No, actually, John is 100% correct. I mean, I could not have said it any better in terms of what Long Island needs to do, and the reluctance or the courage of Long Island leaders to really address the issues in a meaningful way. We just tinker around the edges and then pat ourselves on the back that we're doing some great work. I agree with John about the legislature. I agree with John about basically everything he said. All my research of young people on the island have really supported the concerns that John has mentioned. You know, just as an aside, for the last 68 weeks during this pandemic, I've appeared on News 12 on Thursday mornings between 9 and 9:30, answering Facebook viewers' questions about their struggles and challenges during this pandemic, and just a pat on the back for News 12. The program, The New Normal, we won the prestigious regional Edward R. Murrow Award for innovation, and we also won 2 awards from the Long Island Press Club in terms of, for the program. So the program is widely viewed, and the questions that have come up is, how do I afford to live here? Where's the housing? What are we doing for seniors? Young people saying they can't find a job. A lot of them focused on unemployment insurance because They're looking for jobs and can't find them, or don't want to go to work because they're getting paid more on unemployment than they would elsewhere. We're relying on a heavily service sector economy. We still haven't gotten back close to 100,000 jobs, which have disappeared during the pandemic. And we have people who continue to leave the region and the state. And the state blindly continues to make it more expensive and more for businesses and individuals to live and work here. And yet they say they're doing a great job. I think we have tremendous challenges on Long Island. I think that, and hopefully the next county executive in Nassau, whether it be Laura Curran or Bruce Blakeman, or the one who will succeed Steve Ballone in Suffolk, gets serious about how do we reduce our costs about living on Long Island. Last point I'll make, got to be 15, 20 years ago, Channel 21 had this program about what do we do to keep Long Island competitive. And everybody else said, well, we get the same litany of questions and policies that John had just went through were discussed 20 years ago. And what I had said, I was the only one on the panel of less than 20 people. And I said, you know, unless we deal with making Long Island less expensive and more friendly to businesses and residents, we're going to continue to lose people. And this state has already lost one congressional seat in the population loss. So now we're the fourth most populous state in the country, and we've fallen behind Florida. So New York continues to lose clout in the Congress. If it wasn't for Senate Majority Leader Schumer, it would be unlikely we'd get a nickel from anybody. So the fact is Long Island has to take care of itself. And John raised some really good points that I totally agree with. We are not addressing the really major issues that are impacting Long Island.
All right, I want to start off with the one of the things that you said, Marty, making it more affordable on Long Island. Now, we have a very expensive, but a very good school system on Long Island, generally speaking, with a few exceptions. We have a very good, but a very expensive situation with the police, with a few notable exceptions there too. But how do you, if we solve those two problems, would it make it less costly to live on Long Island, or would that be a blip?
No, I think, remember, schools cost us over $13 billion on Long Island each year. And I think we get, and John, if you have a better number than I have, but I think we get $3 to $4 billion from the state in state aid to education. So we have to raise about $9 billion in taxes. And I think that if we continually use the property tax as a funding source, Long Island will never be affordable. The schools are the biggest issue. Yes, what we pay for our police is usually more. I mean, that payout from the chief of police in Southampton, $775,000 payout on his retirement. That's a little silly. You know, I understand that the rules allowed him to do it, but the rules have to change. And we continue to do the same thing. You know, we talk about it, you know, the old definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, Long Island is totally insane in terms of its finance policies because we don't change anything. So I think that if we address the school, how we finance schools, I did a study, we can reduce our costs by 50% of what property tax by 50% of what people pay. And if you reduce property taxes by 50% and we use another funding source, we make Long Island affordable.
Can you do that without sacrificing the quality of education?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What that means is New York State is already moving in that direction in terms of more aid to education. And where does New York State get that money? In personal income taxes.
I want to address something to John. Of all the things that you mentioned, there's a bunch of things in there that require infrastructure.
Right.
And I mean, that's your bailiwick. You know what you're talking about when it comes to that. Isn't that the same litany of things that will create jobs and opportunities for a lot of people?
Absolutely, Ernie. As we all know too, we have always said this in the engineering profession that, you know, infrastructure creates economic development. And the only way that we're actually going to be able to grow our economy is to actually upgrade our infrastructure. It's a couple of things that people see. What the common taxpayer sees is the quality of the roads. They don't see, and they all see the horrible shape that they're in. They notice the potholes, what it does for the tires, the cars, etc. But what they don't see, there's a lot of infrastructure that they don't see. They don't see, I like to say this: when you flush the toilet, as long as the water leaves the house, you don't really know where it goes. You put garbage at the curb, and the garbage man picks it up, it disappears. You don't really know where it goes. There's a whole, there's a matrix of infrastructure that society depends upon. Whether it's energy, it's water, sewer, drainage, telecom, whatever it is, society depends upon it. And as mentioning, we're the nation's first suburb. So as a result, our infrastructure is really one of the oldest infrastructures in the country. So as a result, it needs to be upgraded. We all know, it's been discussed in Washington. It looks like that the Senate is passed on an infrastructure bill. Now it's probably going to. It looks like it's through committee. It looks like it's going to get voted on next week, and possibly going down to the House. That's something that's really critical. We need it here. We need to grow our economy, and without having an upgraded infrastructure, it's just not going to happen. And frankly, we need federal funds for that. I'll give you a good example. Nassau County is over 75% sewered. Okay, Suffolk County is only 30% sewered. Suffolk County is 3-4 times as large as Nassau County. So what happened there? Nassau County, back in the 70s, the federal government had a construction grants program where the federal government funded 75% of wastewater infrastructure, and the remaining 25% was split between the local municipality and the state. There's 12.5 and 12.5. That program, unfortunately, if we all recall, many of us on the older side here recall the Southwest Sewer District in Suffolk County. There was a scandal there. So as a result, Suffolk County didn't wind up with a major infrastructure system to handle its wastewater. So as a result, there's a couple of hundred private sewage treatment plants there. To now pay for sewering of Suffolk County, you're looking at billions and billions of dollars. So we need federal funds in order to be able to actually deal with this environmental issue, which actually addresses it. Also, it's a critical linchpin for growing our economy.
John, because of the nature of the size of Suffolk County, we're plagued with a bunch of problems because you even take a neighborhood like mine in Centerport, where we have a lot of hills and things like that. That would be a very difficult place to sewer. I mean, maybe you can tell me different.
No, you're right, Ernie. There are challenges there, but and public sewering is not the entire answer for all of Suffolk County. In fact, the county is working very aggressively to deal with the nitrogen pollution of our surface waters. You have to look too far. Every other day, it's in the papers about fish kills, algal blooms, etc. Defiling our marine waters in Suffolk County. But they're moving forward on innovative alternative systems, which are on-site systems, which can actually address the issues of nitrogen, etc. Another major key issue people are going to be reading about is the quality of our drinking water, which is gets affected by what was actually deposited into the ground decades and decades ago from industry and other pharmaceuticals, etc. But you have emerging contaminants which are going to have to be removed from our drinking water supply. That's another expense that, candidly, the island is not really prepared for.
Do we have solutions to that, or is it just the expense?
No, there are technical solutions for it, dealing with, you hear about PFAS, 1,4-dioxane. There are oxidation treatment systems, as well as granular activated carbon, hydrogen peroxide. There are technical solutions. The problem we have here, though, is we've actually, I worked in the health department decades ago in Nassau County, and we used to deal principally in parts per million, and then we got into parts per billion of contaminants, parts per billion. Now we're in parts per trillion. You can basically find almost any chemical anywhere, and there are really tens of thousands of chemicals. And now you can measure it parts per trillion. You can find it anywhere.
I remember Michael Grandy when he was in charge of the water.
The water authority. Yes.
He made his own laboratory, because they were spending tons of money on laboratory tests every week.
Yes.
And he said we've moved from to the point where we didn't even know we had these contaminants.
Exactly right.
And then now we're finding them to be in the water.
Right.
And I think in those days we were only talking in terms of parts per billion.
Yeah, and that was state of the art back in the 70s and 80s. State of the art.
If anybody has questions, I think we can open it up to the other people in the audience.
Okay, Al Vitters, you had a question. I'm going to unmute or allow you to unmute yourself to ask the question. Are you there, Al?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I just had a question for Martin. What would be the alternative to property taxes that he suggests as a viable solution? And if I read the article correctly, that chief payout that was alluded to for like $750,000 was just for overtime and vacation time. And that didn't include current salary, didn't include retirement pay. And as a career military person, I find that kind of payout for the duties performed amazing.
Well, I find it amazing too, Alan. I'll get to your question. When I was Commissioner of Economic Development in Suffolk, that issue of retirement pay and unused vacation and personal time, well, the county exec was Pat Halpin at the time. He reduced everything in half. He cut everything in half so you wouldn't have these large payouts when you leave. And you're right, this guy was making about $235,000, I think, annual salary. So he got $1 million last year for being the police chief of a small police department in Southampton. All right, and those type of things keep on going. Okay, in answer to your question, I've done a little work, and I'm in the process of conducting another study, beginning another study. I'm in the process of raising funding so I can prepare the study. But I have seen that if we did a regional income tax to replace, not in addition to, a similar taxing system like New York City, it's bifurcated, some property, some income tax. It would be fairer, because right now our property taxes have become regressive. Those least able to pay are paying more of their income to property tax, and those who are extremely wealthy, and I'm not picking on the wealthy, but that's about 1% of the island, they're not paying their fair share because they earn way more, and the percentage of property taxes that they pay as a percentage of their payroll is much less than what the middle income people on Long Island pay for property taxes as a percentage of their income. So if we went to a regional income tax, and I do believe it'll work, and I think my study will show that, is that what happens is we send money to Albany. Then Albany, in their infinite wisdom, and as John said, with this really disappointing state legislature, they decide how to spend our money and where to reallocate that money. That's called the transfer payment. If we just send the money to Albany and say, give it all back to us for our schools, and we're going to reduce our property taxes, then that would be a fairer way. That would raise as much money as we're doing right now. The schools would not have to change how they spend the money. Although I do have problems with how school districts spend the money. I think you give them every nickel. There's a nickel that they don't know how to spend. I'd be surprised. And they keep on whining about, I need more money, and less effective way of spending it. But that's an issue for another day. But I do believe that a regional income tax to replace the regressive property tax will make housing more affordable, because now what happens is when people have to go buy a house, young people, they don't have to factor in what their property taxes will be in their monthly mortgage payment. It's now an income tax, which will be less. And so we're actually helping our housing markets because there's going to be a bubble that these housing prices are going to have to come down because just by supply and demand. So if we have something where we make it more affordable, expand the market for our housing, it's going to help our seniors sell housing. It's going to help their houses. It's going to help our young people stay here because we're reducing the cost of living here. That's why people leave. The cost of housing is less, and the cost of property taxes are less.
Marty, how's your idea doing with the legislative body?
Well, you know something, I'm not talking to them yet because I don't see any of them funding my study, because it means that they will have to make a decision and they're going to have to make a comment and have to acknowledge that the property taxes are onerous and regressive. And none of them have the courage to do it because everybody's thinking about re-election next year. But when I finish this study and I've got not-for-profit groups who are supporting it, when we create a critical mass of people who are saying, I can't afford to live here, and this is another alternative, then people will have to start paying attention. Whether that attention goes into action, and we've seen action is a small commodity in terms of legislative progress. I think we'll see at least a discussion, and we need a discussion.
Frank, yeah.
Yeah, Marty, I have two follow-up questions.
One other comment, really quickly.
Go
If
ahead.
you want to see an acknowledgement, take a look at the local papers in terms of the lists of people that are not paying their local taxes, and also the zombie houses, the extent of those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what happens is when you have a regressive taxing structure, you make felons out of our normal citizens because they can't afford to pay it, and they don't. And so, you know, it's you know, the train is coming off the tracks, and I'll tell you one other thing. Because of that taxation of online sales, both counties are just flush with cash because this is new money coming in, and the money is there, and we just have to change our taxing structure, and that takes will and courage, and there's very short supply today in that. And I hope that with this project that I want to undertake, we can give backbone to and support to our legislators to do what they know they have to do.
Frank,
Marty, I have two questions about that proposal. The one is, so what regions do you think would be the ones to tax? Counties? You know, who would have to act? And secondly, the natural reaction is going to be that if you tax the 1%, they're going to move away. So what do you say to both?
Well, no, yeah, but you know, I look, that's a concern. But remember something. There's also a savings that they're going to get by not paying their property taxes, so they pay, you know, a regional income tax. But I got to tell you, the 1% who are going to move away, that's not our problem. The governor is doing quite a good job, and the state legislature is doing quite a good job to encourage these 1% to move away. I think that if we make a fair income tax for the region, which saves property taxes, because remember what we're doing, we're going to have an income tax to replace the property tax. New York State just taxes. They're not replacing anything. So, you know, there's going to be a saving somewhere, but we have to make it fairer. And I think the 1% will make it, when they see it's a fairer taxing structure, I think we'll keep a lot of them here and we make them part of the process. But yeah, taxation makes people relocate, and we have to make sure that our study addresses that issue.
I want to get back to a question for John. Of all the things that we need to do in infrastructure, do we have a real plan for going to get that money from Washington, or is it like they'll be dictating how much to a region?
No, there is a plan on the ask. Both Suffolk County and Nassau County both put together an ask on major infrastructure for both counties. So that ask is in Senator Schumer's lap right now. It was done probably some weeks back, but both counties did that. They looked at what critical infrastructure they felt they needed to do to implement in order to grow the economy, as well as to deal with a number of, like I said, some antiquated infrastructure. So that is that has been submitted to Senator Schumer, and hopefully we'll have a number of items funded on that.
And I assume that those things are articulated in a way that's specific to a different needs.
Yes, I believe it is. Yes.
In fact, if you look at today's Newsday, there's an article where Senator Schumer outlines the dollars that are coming to Long Island and where he thinks it'll be spent. You know, he had 21 million for airports and for infrastructure and things like that. So I would suggest you go to Newsday and get a better idea.
Yeah, but if I may, Marty, some of the ones that the counties asked for weren't on that list. I think those are really ones that were really sort of on the back burner and that he's had really somewhat in the hopper. But there's a lot of new asks there, and depending upon the size of the infrastructure bill, hopefully Nassau and Suffolk counties will, as being a major economic generator, economic engine for New York State, hopefully we get our share.
Well, John, you happen to be right. I mean, I particularly, I know that we looked at it with MacArthur Airport, and when I saw $21 million for MacArthur Airport, and we know what the potential is at that airport, that's woefully inadequate. And you're right. The ask is much more from Suffolk for MacArthur.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's hope that they get it, because it's a marvelous project that we've been working on.
Yes.
We have a question from Lee about consolidation.
Yeah, in terms of school districts, I grew up in a state where each county had one school district. There were 23 counties in the city of Baltimore. There were 24 districts in Maryland. I mean, I find it, it's unreal what exists in Long Island. I know, I think it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, there was a proposal to go from about 120 school districts to 110, and that couldn't get passed. You think there's any chance for consolidation, and what kind of huge savings there would be from consolidating?
Well, if I could just, I did a study while I was at Dowling College, and just very, very simple. You see, the whole idea is that you can't impact education if you want to do consolidation. You can't impact the communities, and you can't impact community schools, because that will be a non-starter. So if you just allow the building principals to operate their schools and just consolidate financially the school districts, then a very, very simple study I did, there was a $500 million savings just by consolidating administrators. Getting rid of all the multiple layers of superintendents, the deputy superintendents, the assistants, and all the administrative work while not touching the classroom. And that's the key. Also, Long Island was set up. That's why we have 3 BOCES districts. Back in the late 40s, the BOCES districts were set up to consolidate Long Island schools into 3 districts. Eastern BOCES in Suffolk, Western and Eastern and Nassau, and that would have been the basis for it. Very, very hard. I'll give you a story. I did a story. I met an assemblyman who continuously goes to Newsday and is reported, I favor consolidation. We got to do this. Well, I sat down with him and I said, hey, listen, let's do a study on consolidation and really show what you can save. I did that 2.5 years ago, and I still haven't heard back from him, because he headed to the hills. Here's a perfect example. The individual will say what they got to say to Newsday, but when it takes the courage to put a study together and say, okay, I can show how we can save money for consolidated school districts, they demur. And that's the problem we have.
Marty, if I could just maybe even add to that. Back at Regional Planning Council, we did a sustainability plan back in 2010 called LI 2035, and we actually looked at the issue of schools, because we all know it's essentially, in essence, up plus or minus a few points, but 2/3 of it, 2/3 to 70% of the tax bills are schools related. So we worked with actually NICET, the teachers union, school superintendents, school board association, and what was very, very illustrative for us and on the planning council was that we found out that there are over 500 mandates, mandates on schools emanating from the state in New York State that are not federal mandates. Over 500 mandates and requirements on schools. And you're saying, like, how do we get there? Because everybody's pet project or pet peeve for say, let's cut this. It's somebody else's favorite project or their special need. So it's a challenge once you start talking about trying to cut any programs and consolidation. But if we don't get there somewhere, we're never going to be able to, deal with this issue of unsustainable tax burden.
Yeah, and John is
Actually,
right on that, and that's why the proposals that I put together don't impact those items. It just says, how do we have a better way to finance the schools in such a way that we can maintain our excellent quality of education, put the building principals in charge as they are now, have the communities involved as they are now, and all we're touching are the bloated duplicative infrastructure of administrators. That's all we're touching, and we change nothing else. And just to get that off the dime, I hear the frustration in John and what he was saying. It's absolutely, but if you prove to people that the education of their kids won't change, but it'll cost less money out of their pockets, then you get their attention, and then at least you have a beginning point to talk. We're not even at the starting line for discussion, because we can't say in good faith that we can make it cheaper and also maintain the quality of education for our kids. And that's where we need to be. We need to get to that starting line, and that's the data we have to develop, and that's the critical mass of people. That's why I'm saying I'm putting together not-for-profits that'll support what I'm trying to do and help me raise the money to do it. But get to that starting line and say we can do it, and we can make it cheaper, and we're not going to impact how kids are educated. Now let's get and talk to our legislators and get behind them. Because if the people say to the legislators, you do what we'd like to do and save us money, we'll vote for you. Well, now you got the legislators' attentions.
Look, you can even forget about maintaining the level of education. You can actually increase the programs with consolidation, because then you have the whole chance of magnet schools and things like that, which we just don't have,
Right.
Because every little fiefdom is way too small to do innovative programming.
Exactly right. That's why we actually thought that possibly BOCES, which really transcend, different school district boundaries, had the potential to possibly have those schools. We talked about regional schools like you have in the city, which unfortunately the mayor looks like he's trying to change the standards there. But whether they be STEM academies, et cetera, we thought BOCES had that potential in order to, like I said, to penetrate those boundaries.
John, we
You're
have
right.
Ronald in our audience. I don't know if she wants to comment on that, or if it would be
Say again, Ernie, you dropped out there. Who would you like me to unmute?
Leah Arnold. She's from BOCES.
Okay.
Morning.
I've allowed her to unmute.
So, Ernie, I'm not quite sure what you want me to comment on as far as the regional consolidation of school districts.
You have a very limited number of administrative offices running a big operation. How's that working?
BOCES is a very large organization. We have about 4,000 employees between part-time and full-time staff, our special education services, our CTE, and then we do all kinds of business services to provide school districts efficient and effective and economical options besides hiring, say, a business official or a librarian for only part of the day, right? So we do a lot of shared expertise. To my knowledge, there hasn't been new or recent conversations about consolidation of school districts into the BOCES, but John's right. Our mission is to provide services that we reduce cost to district and make sure that the services are equitable among our districts.
Thank you. Frank, do we have some people in the wings with questions?
Well, no, I think the other questions were really on the same topic, but I have a different topic, and it really is big picture. But to my mind, the Long Island, John mentioned it was America's oldest suburbia, and it was really grown by the economic engine of either Manhattan, and then a few decades after that, Grumman. And it was very clear what the economic engines were that built Long Island, and we have no replacement economic engine today. And to me, that's the big picture problem. And where are we going to go with that?
Well, Frank, if I may, I think our greatest opportunity, frankly, is we talk about the quality of our educational system, and we have our science and innovation corridors. I really think it is keeping our educated workforce, our educated students to become basically the growing ground, if you will, of our workforce. If you were a baseball organization or a sports franchise, would you really train all your star athletes like we do in our grade system, grade and K through 12 system, and then we'll basically make them all free agents? That's what we do. Is we spend all the tough capital through K through 12, and then all of a sudden they go to college, and then a lot of them never to return. If you had a business, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't spend all the investment capital and then let them loose. Why aren't we doing things to keep our young workforce here?
What suggestions would you make, John?
Excuse me?
What suggestions would you make to keep them, to retain
So
those?
getting back to the challenge is growing the economy, growing businesses, facilitating businesses. Unfortunately, like I said, unfortunately in this state and on the island, it is adverse. I know when I started my business 37 years ago, reading up on how you start a business or whatever, New York was really not the easiest state in the country to be doing that. You read about what they do down in Texas. In Texas, they do everything they can to help you succeed. It appears up here, they do everything they can to trip you up and make it more difficult. But you have to be determined. Up here, we have, and I say this because I've grown my business, like I said, for decades here. I could never have done this. I don't believe I could have done this in the engineering profession that I have and the company I have in another state. We have the smartest and most determined and hardworking people here on Long Island. Why aren't we capitalizing on that? You have a number of companies that have. We've lost Grumman, as Frank's alluded to, but in the aerospace industry, but we're changing. You look, we have science innovation corridors. We've got research. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at, and renewable energy, okay? Green energy. We're going to have huge wind farms off Long Island. This could be a burgeoning economy here. We have technical people. We have great schools here. We have great colleges. We need to incentivize, keep people here. Getting back to Marty's point also is we need to have housing so people can afford to stay here, live here, and grow their families. And also we need more affordable housing so empty nesters can get out of their homes and can sell them and turn them over to young people at an affordable price. We're not doing that. The model is broken right now.
One of the things you mentioned, John, was the science community. Well, the science community is a very high paid unit, of people. And I think that that's a place where we probably have grown a lot, but we could do more. In the audience, we have Dr. John Cantor, and his unit has been, you've been growing, right, John?
I'm trying to find him on the list here. Oh, here he is under doctor. Okay, sorry, going
Thanks.
to ask you. There we go.
Good to see you, Ernie. Thank you. You didn't include. Thank you for not including me in the high-paid portion, but that's okay. I mean, and it's good to see Martin and John. Thank you so much. This is a topic area that is so comprehensive and so integrated. It's hard for me to kind of pinpoint one thing, but I'll try. Just one thing I see from the purely academics, that there isn't really a consolidated consortial approach to environmental concerns on Long Island. I'll give you two examples of this, and John brought this up, and Martin actually brought it up from the economic standpoint. The idea of looking at analytical work. When I was in graduate school, if we found something detecting an environmental contaminant in parts per million, we were pretty excited about it. We now have endocrine disrupting chemicals, hormone mimicking chemicals that the US EPA has not undertaken getting involved with detecting all of these because it's so complex, and that's very expensive. So there's an economic driver. If resources can go back into the level of research that had been done in the 70s and 80s in the beginning of the environmental movement, I think we might have a chance in addressing those particular problems. Energy development and John, I hope you don't have any sharp objects in your hand, but I just, the idea of wind energy has implications that I don't even think we've begun to, I mean, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of the BOEM group, all of the NYSERDA groups, all addressing tons of needs, but the identifying the infrastructure and the economics. Martin, I know you've probably been looking at all of the PSE and G and the types of things that are associated with that. We're talking about an infrastructure that would make our response to Sandy or to a storm condition along the core pale in comparison in how much it's going to cost to just get that energy offshore onto the land. So that goes back to one of our sponsors here, Ernie, the idea of Covanta, and this has been my mantra for 30 years. The idea of resource recovery was a major engineering infrastructure need in the city of New York. There was going to be at a time when there was going to be resource recovery facilities in every borough to provide the energy that was necessary. And we have Covanta, which is an amazing process, which is not included in New York State's energy plan for the future. They don't have any resource recovery situation in there. And that does two things, well, several things. One, it eliminates the plastic situation to some great extent. And it is absolutely important in dealing with the throwaway society that has really developed. And the last thing I just wanted to mention that I think both gentlemen have addressed, and this is the most unbelievable level of things that have to be involved, but certainly from the standpoint of infrastructure is a major contributing factor. If anyone has been on a roadway in Nassau and Suffolk County during the pandemic, if you didn't learn anything about what the pandemic has impacted on Long Island, then I think maybe you probably will be moving off Long Island, because it is really not inducive to having the transportation, the networking, all of the things that deal with, and we should have learned a lot from the idea of remote. Look at what we're doing here. We're doing a Zoom session that even 5 years ago, we wouldn't be doing this. We would have a social interaction that's a lot different. And we need people in this thing. So that basically,
hey, Ernie, just some personal privilege. Hey, Tanacretti, been a long time.
I know it has.
So great to see you.
Same here, Mark.
Hey, John, if I could just add one thing, you mentioned about Covanta resource recovery. One thing you didn't mention is with that waste reduction, Long Island exports off Long Island, almost half its garbage. People would never believe that. Think of the thousands of trucks a year that are occupying space on the LIE, taking up, adding traffic, adding to the reduced efficiency of people traveling to and from work, as well as adding all the emissions into our air. So it's a major issue here. I mentioned it here. We're going to have an impending garbage crisis on the island here when the Brookhaven landfill closes. That's just adding to an overwhelming problem right now.
Yeah, and isn't that was something that we talked about, John, that winter project, where they get 228 acres. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. When I was commissioner, I was working with the Long Island Railroad about using intermodal by having solid waste and trucking on the off-peak hours on our rail system to get stuff off the island and eliminate trucks from the roads. That'll help the road maintenance conditions and a whole lot of other stuff. That's what at least Winters is trying to do in terms of intermodal and get trucks off the road. We still haven't gotten rid of those trucks off the road. And Ernie, we should have had the maglev, instead of the third lane, and that way would have done it a lot better. China has it. I rode the China bullet train. You can go to get Xi'an to Chengdu, which is like hundreds and hundreds of miles in like an hour and a half using maglev. I mean, we are so far behind in technology because the NIMBYs stopped the technology.
But right now I'm writing a piece that says we can whip their ass, and we can. You know what? I remember being a high school student, and Sputnik was going beep, beep, beep. That's all it did. It didn't do anything. It didn't send any information. And it scared us into being the leader in space exploration. And I think right now we should be as scared as we were when Sputnik went up, and be as everybody put their shoulder to the wheel. And the great scientists and the great construction people and the great the complex of people that we have in this country can beat the Chinese. I remember when the Japanese were going to eat our lunch and they were buying Rockefeller Center. Well, that didn't turn out so well. And when Khrushchev said, "We will bury you," he didn't. We buried him. And never doubt the resources of this country. We're a great diverse group. What we need to do is sometimes concentrate on a problem.
Can we allow Ken to ask a question? He's been waiting for about 10 minutes now.
Yeah, hi. You know, when you talk about the schools, let's take one school out of thousands on the island. You know, they buy ink, pencils, computers, they buy everything. Why not consolidate and work out a deal where you get a distributor that has to give the best prices in the world, and have one distributor in Suffolk and one in Nassau, or one for the island, to get all school supplies from?
You know, Ken, they have consortiums that have put together to do just that. You know, a lot of school districts combine to do that. You're right. It's and the counties have agreed to allow schools to be a consortium with the counties to buy supplies. However, it's not widespread, and you're right. Look, to get schools more affordable, or our taxing structure more affordable, there has to be incremental steps. And certainly purchasing is one of them. I took a look at do you know every school district has a purchasing agent?
Yeah.
You don't need it.
I know.
You don't need that, you know? And so that's where, when you start consolidating functions, non-educational functions, that's where the money's to be spent. So you're taking the first step on what should be a comprehensive consolidation of non-education services in our school districts. That's where the savings are.
Yeah, it'd be a tremendous savings, tremendous.
Yes.
Frank, we have some other questions out there.
Well, we're following up. The other questions here, I think, are following up on the topics that we have already just addressed. I'll tell you what, though, I have a follow-up, really sort of an anecdote where we were talking about brain drain and the sciences. So actually, my older son is getting his doctorate next week in Texas. And why did he end up in Texas? Because he went to school for neuroscience, a very high value scientific discipline. And the way that works is they have to have these multi-million-dollar machines, which are funded by national dollars, federal money. And then people like my son are drawn to the university because they get their tuition paid plus a stipend. The stipend they gave him in Texas was $18,000 a year. And he was able to survive for 5.5 years on $18,000 and has gotten his doctorate. Now, those same federal dollars, if they were to be spent at Stony Brook or Hofstra or anywhere else, and it just wouldn't work.
Nope.
And so guess what? He's settling in Texas.
It's the cost. You are so right. It's the cost of Long Island which drives people away. And all we do is tinker around the edges. Other states are getting it right. They are making sure their costs, their taxing structures are people friendly. New York State, I just think I can't. I'm speechless. I mean, I see legislators being proud that they're making it more difficult to live and work in the region. I don't get it. You know, that's why Texas and Florida are beating the pants off us.
You know, the salt taxes haven't come up in the conversation. What's your take on that?
That we certainly, first of all, look, I'm a CPA also. And I'll tell you, a lot of my clients were not impacted by the elimination of the salt, primarily because they got a big increase in the standard exemption to $27,000. And their itemized expenses are less. However, when you have people coming into the region buying more expensive houses, or houses are expensive, when you take away the mortgage and the property taxes, $15,000, $20,000 in property taxes, then that increased standard deduction you get doesn't help. listen, the salt was just a vindictive, I believe, a vindictive act of the federal legislature against high tax states like New York and California. We pay New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. We pay, we're the top 3 states which send billions more to the federal government than we get back in aid. So places like in the southern states that are benefiting from their increased federal aid are really getting the federal aid that we have given to them. So it's a lot of nerve not to have us have our salt deduction. And I praise Tom Suozzi, because he said he will not sign on to any bill that doesn't have repeal of the salt repeal. And let's hope he sticks to his guns and everything is held up until we get our salt deduction back.
Yet we had Kathleen Rice in our forum a few months ago, and she basically said that dog don't hunt. No matter what Suozzi says, it's just not going to happen.
Well, if she would get behind Suozzi, and because all it takes is 4 votes, 4 Democrats to switch. So if we got all our Democratic delegation to say that we're not going to vote for this new 3.5 inflationary laden Biden infrastructure, human infrastructure bill, until we get our salt deduction, then you'll see movement, because that bill will not pass if 4 Democrats flip.
Yeah, Martin, I don't think it's a great idea to put eggs in that basket, because if you lose the infrastructure bill that they're trying to, we lose too much. So it's a gamble, and I don't think it's a smart gamble.
Oh no, I'm not saying I'm talking about human infrastructure, not the real infrastructure.
The second bill, not the initial infrastructure.
Oh yeah, no, the initial bill has to pass,
Right.
but the second bill, that's the one that they're throwing in all sorts of junk.
Right.
And that one that Suozzi should put his foot
new
down.
definition of infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't find that in the dictionary, by the way.
I know. It's, no, the first bill has to pass, and I wouldn't hold up the first bill, which is real infrastructure for salt. But the second bill, that's quote unquote human infrastructure, I wouldn't let it see the light of day unless the salt deduction was replaced.
Well, the monies that Schumer is talking about right now, that he's saying are available or will be available, are they in the first or the second?
First,
Okay,
that's real infrastructure.
hard infrastructure.
Yeah, hard, bricks and mortar, steel,
Yeah.
pipes, all
Rail.
that junk.
Well,
That's the real infrastructure.
roads.
That's the stuff that Cameron loves.
That's right.
He's taken out his pencil already and he's drawing blueprints.
You know what? I have to tell you this, in engineering circles, we used to always say, it's one thing about infrastructure, I said this before, is that both sides always agreed. They were in support of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Republicans say cut spending, and the Democrats would say increase revenues, which was taxes. But the one thing we always said in circles was that wait till a bridge falls down, then they'll finally pass an infrastructure bill. Well, bridges have fallen down and they still didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. You want to make a closing remark, because we're going to be wrapping.
Oh, that's great. Got 2 minutes left, and we have our speakers just wrap up.
Great. This has been a great opportunity. Good discussion. John, always a pleasure to talk to you. Tanacredi, always great to see you again. Listen, and one thing we have to focus in on is that, and I think this is what came out, we have to find a way to make Long Island more affordable in a major way, not tinkering around the edges and then patting ourselves on the back that we did something mammoth. Long Island has not done anything significant and mammoth in years, and it's about time that we do.
John?
Yep, I'd like to say it's always great talking about it, but I have to employ my the motto of my alma mater. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. Our motto is acta non verba, which is deeds, not words. Long Island and our elected officials in the state have always been good on words. It's the action that's been lacking. So let's see if we can get some action, start doing something about it instead of just talking about it.
All right, thanks.
So,
And
wait, Ernie, let's just mention our next speaker.
I was just about to do that. Suffolk
Okay.
County Legislator Rob Trotter. He is a very controversial person. He speaks his mind. He's a guy I've always liked and admired, and he's a former policeman, And he's the one guy on the legislature who's not afraid to stand up to the police and tell them that they're asking for too much at times. So he will be interesting and informative, I am sure. And I want to thank all our sponsors for making all this happen. And I want to thank everybody who came today for their comments and their ear in hearing two important contributors to our economy and our infrastructure, John Cameron and Dr. Cantor. Thank you all so much and have a good morning.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.